Lenora. I'm the creator of The Bitchy Bookkeeper.
Hi, I'm Kristen, author of The Age of the Child.
Hi, I'm Isabel, founder and firebrand of the Uprising Spark, and we are the three founding non-mothers of Childfree Girls. In today's episode, we have four very special guests. There are four women here with us today who come from different backgrounds, different countries, and they come from different experiences, and they're all different age. Because this episode is about what it is to be a child-free woman in that period of your life that you are, in terms of what your age is right now. So welcome, ladies. We're very happy to have you here today.
Happy to be here.
So before we introduce you guys, or I'm going to let you introduce yourselves, basically, just for the audience, I want you to know that we understand that this episode, all the child-free women who are here, we're not representative of every single child-free woman out there because everyone comes from different countries, different backgrounds, different experiences of life, different everything. But we hope that what you hear here today is going to maybe inspire you. So let's start with Natasha.
Hi, my name's Natasha. I'm from the UK and I'm in my teens. I plan on never having children because that doesn't seem great. I obviously, because of my age, I haven't really gotten anyone like thinking me, basically. I'm not particularly looking forward to that. So, yeah.
Can you tell us what you expect? What do you expect it to be for you in the future as a child-free woman? What do you think your life is going to look like?
I'm hoping it's going to be simple. But considering what I've seen online with like YouTube and Reddit, like Reddit forums and that, I've seen, like I read about what people have written about, and I'm expecting that kind of like in my 20s and my 30s. I've only really gotten asked about children once, and that was by my parents. I think they understand that I don't want them, hopefully.
What is it that you're seeing on Reddit that you are hoping you don't have to look forward to?
Like co-workers and people you meet, just like.
Is it the judgment? Like you're not looking forward to the judging aspect of being child-free? Okay, yeah. Well, that's totally fair. That's all right.
Christina.
Hi guys. I hope you hear me all right, and let me start off by saying that I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. So my name is Christina. I'm about to be 28 years old by the time this episode comes out. So I'm still in my 20s, but already fast approaching the 30s. And I'm starting to get those bingos that Natasha is maybe referring to as the judgment and quite a lot of the sort of unpleasant things that you're not looking forward to when being child-free. So in my country, I'm from Bulgaria, and it's very, how should I put it? It's not very common that you see a woman who's child-free. And I'm starting to get questions, and the questions started to shift from, are you going to have children, to when are you going to have children? And yeah. And when I answer with, I don't think I'm going to have children, I sort of start getting those questions that probably Natasha has read on Reddit. Aren't you afraid of dying alone? Don't you know what you're missing out of? And also what you mentioned, like the co-working environment. I'm a researcher, and I get to travel a lot and visit a lot of different countries. And everywhere I go, this sort of question tends to pop up, like, do you have children? Are you married, etc., etc. And when I say that I'm not having children, my experience so far is, well, you still got time, or well, how do you plan to have children and combine them with your career? And I sort of currently stopped saying that I'm not going to have children. I just sort of nod because I'm a bit tired of explaining. And it's a bit frustrating, this assumption that everyone wants or can actually have children. And this is something that I'm currently meeting, like currently getting quite a lot from people around. And as for my hopes for the future, I hope that sort of the things that I've been sort of told by people who have children or plan to have children, for instance, like getting sick and being all alone. I really hope those don't come true. Uh, um, I what I would really like for the future is for people to maybe take it easier on other people. This is sort of a private question. Do you want to have children or are you going to have children? And I can't imagine the position of people who can't have children and being constantly asked something like this. And for me, it's easy because I don't want to have children for a variety of reasons. But I think we sort of need to develop this sort of sensitivity that not everyone needs to be in the same position. And yeah, I guess this is it.
Did you know that you were child-free when you were in your teens?
Yeah, I sort of always assumed that someday I would break and want to have children, but I always knew that this is not something I want, and for a variety of reasons, either don't want to do or don't think it's reasonable to do. But I always thought that, probably someday it's going to happen. It happens to everyone, But with age, I sort of didn't change my mind, and situations around me sort of reaffirmed my position on childbirth, childbearing, and child raising. So yeah, that didn't change for me.
Thank you, Christina.
I would really like to add that I'm so happy to be able to meet here women in their 40s, 50s, and 60s that are child-free, because in my life I have never personally met one. So I'm really excited to hear all of you guys, and thank you, Childfree Girls, for providing this space. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here.
I'm getting emotional already. Seriously, just listening to you already. I'm like, oh my god. Okay, I'll talk later. But yeah, I'm really getting emotional listening to you guys.
It is actually your turn to talk now. We're in our 30s now. So.
Yeah, but I'm technically older than you, so you're supposed to go. By a couple months.
Older than 4 months. Okay, do you want me to go first? Mine's going to be very brief because I didn't know that I was child-free until I was in my 30s. I hadn't embraced my child freedom until then. When I was Natasha's age, I remember distinctively when I was in high school talking with my friends. It was never, are you going to have kids? It was always, when we have kids. When we have kids, we're going to take them all to the park at the same time. When we have kids, we're all going to have play dates and they're all going to go to the same school. They're going to be best friends. There was never nothing about my formation made me ever question motherhood. It was inevitable. I just didn't know when it was going to happen. And then in my 20s, I just spent so much time just partying and studying, and I was traveling. And because if I had actually put an effort into finding myself a husband, I would be a mom. I would definitely, today I would have at least one kid. But my 20s, I was concerned about other things, thankfully. It wasn't until my early 30s that this was somebody who asked me the question. It was my therapist. I was talking to her about something that had to do with feeling that I was not having kids. So I didn't feel too much as an adult. Like, how is this adulting thing if you don't have any kids? And she said to me, have you ever consider not having children. Like, that's a choice, you know? And for me, it didn't hit until then that that was a choice. And this was 5 years ago. And it was like something lit inside me, and I was like, you know what? I really don't want to have kids. And it's been a process after that to deal, because in your 30s, you still have to navigate through the bingos and the judgment, and when is it that you're going to find a husband and have kids, and it's getting a little bit late to you. TikTok, the clock is ticking, biological clock is, especially in your 30s, when you get the biological clock thing. So it's been more about learning how to deal with those type of comments, because I'm very comfortable in my decision. So it has been more about how to talk to the people who are questioning my own personal decision. And what I hope for the future is just to continue being so firm in my decision, and just stand so firmly in my truth that I'm going to be able to inspire other women to do the same.
Well, I am 37, and I knew from a young age that I did not want to be a mother, but I didn't realize I had a choice until I was 22. So I grew up in a religious household, went to church 3 times a week, and around the age of 7 is when I really started to notice the women. And I didn't go to church in a church setting. It was like in a home setting. It was a different type of religion. And a standout moment for me was seeing women with several children. Their husbands were away working, and we did this thing in the church where everyone kind of stands up and says something. So it was a little bit different setup. But they'd all be like, the mothers would be upset, the kids would be fighting on the couch, and they'd be talking about the religious struggles of whatever. And I just remember sitting there thinking as a little girl, okay, I'm a female. I don't want this to be my life. And I saw that. And so that kind of, that I didn't feel great about life in the future if that's what it was going to be for me. So as a teenager, and I was very musical, and I started music young. So I started teaching violin full time at 15. Like, I couldn't even go to regular high school. And I just I embraced music and made my career my focus as a teenager, because when you have 5 friends who get married right after high school graduation, and that's kind of people's focus, not even just religious friends, like other friends, as a teenager, it's kind of like, okay, we're gonna maybe go to college and get married and have kids, and you're hearing a lot of that, especially starting around the age of 16. And I didn't really say anything, but I knew that I did not want that to be my life. And so I really focused on the violin and piano and just making it my entire life. I was a virgin until I was 26 years old, because I was like, I'm not going down that road. But then at 22, and I've shared this story before, but at 22, my mom died, and my 19-year-old brother got his girlfriend pregnant a month later. So a lot of things happened that year, and it was in that moment that I was realizing I had, my friends who weren't married were saying by the time we're 25, we'll be settled down and starting to have kids. I was 22, and I'm thinking, I haven't done all of the things. Like, I have all these dreams and passion, and at that point it was not just avoiding marriage and kids. It was like, no, life is opening up for me now in my early 20s. And then I realized, oh wait, people have a choice. And then from then at 22, the light bulb went off, and then it was just done, like, no questions. So and then I got into relationships and stuff in my later 20s. And at that time, my 10-year career kind of disintegrated. So I always say there's a quarter life crisis at 25, because things just fall apart at 25, 26, no matter how prepared you think you are. And so getting into relationships and stuff, and then of course that's when you're starting to hear at 20, like Christina, like you're talking about, now it's like, well, when are you going to have kids? Because suddenly I had a relationship, and people are settling down, so to speak. And, I just kind of didn't give much of an answer, and, focused on work. And then 30, happened. And 30, I have to say, if you can get, so Tasha and Christina, if you can get to the age of 30, okay, you're golden, because things really click at 30. And it's not that like things get perfect. It's just a lot of BS falls away, I found it, once you turn 30. And then early 30s, I was starting to realize I want to talk about this. And then a relative at my grandmother's funeral said, "Oh, your time will come to have kids." And I was like, when have I ever said I wanted children? And then 35 hit, and I'm like, I'm not staying silent about this anymore. I mean, as you know, I'm a very talkative person, and it just felt wrong to stay silent about being child-free and not wanting to have kids. So, and I was frankly bored with social media feeds, seeing babies, and I was like, oh, okay. So then I started blogging, and then the rest is history. So now at 37, now I'm like, okay. I just wanted to talk about this until I'm 95 years old and die peacefully in my sleep. So that's my future. But it's really like, since the age of 35, for me, like kind of like what Isabel was saying, it's really solidified for me that it's always felt right, but to talk about it and to meet everyone and doing this, I mean, I never in my wildest dreams imagined that I would be a part of a really cool collaboration, and just like getting emotional listening to you three who've already spoken, and I'm probably gonna be bawling by the time I get to Lizette. I don't know. I don't cry very often, but this means something to me, and I really, I just think it's so cool, and I'm so excited for the future in keep continuing to share my journey, but just to hopefully build stuff that inspires other women to embrace their child freeness, and just giving like all of my friends who have kids, like their kids, just knowing that it's an option. It's not that I want to convince people to not have kids, but you know, I have nephews, and they know I don't want kids, and we talk about it, and just to know that there's a choice, and if I can be any kind of small part of that movement, I die very happy at 95. So that's me.
Thank you, Elle. Kristen.
I've been trying to think about how young I was when I first started even having thoughts about whether to have children or what that meant. And I think the first threat was my stepmother saying, because we would get in fights, and she would say something like, "You'll see when you have kids." And I would scream, "I'm never having kids." And she said, "Oh, yes, you will." And when she said, "Oh, yes, you will," I remember there being a very bad feeling, because she was making it sound like it was inevitable, like I had no choice, or like I would change my mind against my will in some way. But I don't think I ever really thought about it beyond that until probably right before I got married the first time. And I kind of had a vague understanding that kids would be expected, sort of. But I'd seen so many movies about male characters, or with male characters, who not only do they have to be apparently dragged into marriage, and marriage is the worst thing in the world for them and they get trapped into it, but oh my goodness, then there are kids. Men don't want kids, women want kids, and they force them on men. So I thought, I mean, I didn't even think, I just assumed, I guess, that kids would not be something I'd have to talk about because guys don't want them. And so it wasn't anything in there. It wasn't anything I even thought I would have to talk about the first time I got married. So we got married, and then kids became a conversation, and I thought, and that was a really, really heavy, depressing, scary moment when he asked about kids, because I saw, I mean, I don't really like commitment anyway, which is why I'm fine with marriage, because you can always get a divorce. I don't want something irreversible happening to me.
My God.
I mean, I didn't even like the idea of going steady when I was a teenager. It was just like, I would like someone so much, and then as soon as I found out they liked me, I was out, because I had to commit to liking them then, you know. It was very uncomfortable. So the idea of this future that would be set out forever, like one choice in your whole future, forever you're a mom. And I just felt really heavy and really unhappy, and it was like just this big cloud of darkness in envisioning that future. So I had to start thinking about it, and I had to start telling him, you know, I don't think I want this. And we had the conversation a few times, and finally he said, okay, look, if we're not having kids, that's kind of a deal breaker. So I was like, nope. Um, I wasn't as firm as I should have been the second time I got married when I said I didn't want kids. I think I said, you know, I probably, before we get married, while I have only an engagement ring, I'm pretty sure I don't want kids. I was like 27 or 28 or something. So I did at least recognize that who knows what'll happen, but I was pretty sure. And he said, oh no, it's fine. Lots of people can't have kids. And I said, no, that's different. I don't think I want them. There's a choice. And so you could easily look at me as, you know, not being able to have them. You can have sympathy for me, but if I don't want them, that's a conscious choice that you have to accept. And he said, yeah, it's fine. 3 years into being married, he told me he had always thought I would change my mind. Uh, so that ended for other reasons too. But I'm actually really glad that with these two men, there were other problems, because if it were a beautiful, wonderful soulmate connection, and the only problem was whether or not to have kids, that would be devastating. So I got lucky in the respect that we were completely wrong for each other anyway. After that, I felt still a little bit angry though, because kids were expected, and I didn't like that kids were expected because I was a woman, and I didn't like that I hadn't yet thought about it enough or really explored it enough. This was probably I got divorced for the second time in the late 1990s. And, you know, the internet was still America Online. And there wasn't Google, maybe Google was brand new or just about to start. So there wasn't a lot of searching online to do about child freeness. I didn't even know it was a word. And I just remember being kind of irritated and feeling rebellious that there was this expectation of me that I didn't want to do, and who thinks they get to decide what I do for my life, and why should I be expected to want this, and why do I feel like a bad person for not wanting it, and why are there so many books about people who don't want kids as if they're weird? Like what I was just really pissed off until I finally got comfortable with it. And then like it was almost like there was a switch, and it was probably close to what Lenore might have felt like and what Isabel might have felt like when they realized they had a choice. I knew that I could say no. I knew I had to say no, because saying yes was simply not an option. But coming to the realization that it's perfectly within my rights to say no, and also kind of exciting because everyone else is out there having kids, and I get to be the one who's, you know, skipping school and being like, see ya, sucker. So at that point, it just became more of a freedom feeling. And with that freedom came more confident feelings. And with that also came a different feeling about bingos and the response to them. Because I think when you're mad yourself and when you're feeling pressure yourself, when people say things like that, it's one of those things like if the truth only hurts if it should. So if someone gives you a bingo and you're deeply offended by it, I think it's because you maybe somewhere feel like maybe I am wrong for not wanting kids or something. I don't know. I'm not an analyst. But I know that once I got really comfortable, the bingos just seemed absurd instead of upsetting. And now I just turned 46, and I just started watching. I was trying to take a nap earlier, so I tried to throw on something that was formulaic and I wouldn't care about. And I watched a couple episodes of this Tia Leone show where she's a speaker, something, but she has kids. And I think she's not too much older than I am. And I'm looking at her and I'm thinking, you seem like a person who has crossed a certain line into a certain kind of adulthood because you have kids. And so you've had to be this kind of adult who has kids, which is a very different kind of adult from one who doesn't have kids by choice. And I'm watching her and I'm thinking how happy I am to have never attained that particular kind of adulthood. I feel like a perpetual child of my parents instead of a parent to children. And that's still very exciting. We're looking for a place to move to, and I don't have to think about anything except what kind of house we want. You know, I mean, woohoo! It's a lot of fun.
To clarify, with your current husband, not your parents, that you're
Yes,
moving into this house with.
I'm number 3.
Yeah.
And what do you expect for the future, Chris?
Well, obviously, I expect to die alone. But you know what? Even with kids, I mean, who knows? I don't know what I expect for the future, and that's the way I like it. I don't ever want to know what to expect, which is one of the reasons I didn't want kids. And people will say having kids doesn't necessarily, you know, you never know what's going to happen with your kids. You could love each other, you could hate each other, you could be best friends. They can make your life very exciting. I'm sure they can, but you still always have them, and you're still always a parent. And aside from knowing that I'll never be a parent, that just means anything can happen, and I don't know what it will be, and I'm really glad about that.
Thank you, Kay. Leanna.
Well, if you had somebody on here under the age of 10, I could say that I had my whole life right in front of me right here. The whole journey is just every decade I'm going, oh yeah, remember that. It's perfect. So I'm in my 50s, and my journey, I never had a burning desire to have kids. And I think when I was in my teens and early 20s, it was always kind of one of those things that people you assume that you're going to at some point. And I got married really young. I got married at the age of 22. And at that point, I made it very clear that and there was an if in there, even though it wasn't a conscious if, I said, if I have kids, it's not going to be until after I'm 30. And the closer I started getting to 30, the more I thought, I don't want this at all. And it's not that I don't like kids. It's just that I've never had that burning desire. It's just never been there. Like if people see babies and they gush, I see babies and part of me thinks, oh, you poor little things. Because I think, life's not easy, right? I mean, it's just not. Puppies now, get me around a puppy, I'm a different reaction. But it's never been a real burning desire. And I didn't have any kind of clock ticking. I always used to tell my friends, like, doesn't it have a snooze button? I don't understand, because it was just never really there for me. And my ex-husband, I think, wanted them too. And around the age of 28, it was just kind of we fought about disciplining the dog, so I knew it was never going to work. So 30 years later, not remarried and no children and no regrets whatsoever. I have none. I've never thought twice about it. You kind of go through these different stages, and I'm hearing them with all the different decades where, do you want kids? It's kind of Natasha, people will ask, are you going to have kids someday? Or they just tell you you're going to someday when you have kids, right? Like I was laughing at Kristen's stepmother's story because my dad's still living. My dad's 84, and I will tease him and say, I got the ultimate revenge, because he used to always say, someday, kid, when you have your own. And I didn't. So I'm like, ha ha. And but yeah, so I never had any of that. So again, divorced, and I have had a ton of different opportunities. But you do go from, when are you going to have, or are you going to have them, to when are you going to have them? And then after I got divorced, people stopped asking that questions. And then later, when I'd meet strangers, do you have them? And now I get asked, do you have grandchildren? Which is a whole different shift. So it's interesting. But I literally have a single regret. I've traveled, I've moved, I've had different careers. I can go any place I want to go. I can do anything I want to do. And I do pretty much anything that I want to do. I love everything about it. And I can relate to the freedom comment, Kristen, on a big level, on a big scale, because I'm the same way, was born that way. I had a friend actually with the commitment thing. I had a really dear friend of mine say, I said to her once, I think I might have commitment issues. And she said, no, you don't. You're 100% committed to your freedom. And that was kind of like wow, there it is. That's exactly who I am. As far as the getting old and sick and nobody there, I know plenty of people my age or my parents' age who have kids who aren't there for them. I mean, that's no guarantee in anything. And you'll find as you go through the different decades, you acquire friendships that are so intense and so special, and you're so bonded that if anything's ever happened to me, somebody's been there, and it's somebody who genuinely cares, and they're not there out of obligation. So you don't have to worry about any of that piece of it. That's not, shouldn't play into it at all. As far as look toward the future, with each decade, and I love Lenora said, when you get to your 30s, you're pretty much golden. Well, you just get more polished with each decade. You get closer and closer and closer. And I know Lizette will probably speak to this as well, but you get closer and closer and closer to being your authentic self. And to me, that's the ultimate goal. And if having children makes someone their authentic self, then that's perfect. But it wasn't something that fed into who I am. And I feel like I've been given a great gift in the opportunity to spend 58 years of my life honing the skill of being Leanna, because you find over time who you really, really are. And as you get older, you're able to really explore that on a larger level. And I know so many women my age who now are on the verge of or have just found themselves with the empty nest syndrome, and they haven't got a clue. Like, they don't know who they are, they don't know what they want to do, they feel completely lost, and that saddens me. Not everybody, but that is the experience of a lot of people my age. And I mean, the future to me is just keeps getting rosier, man. I can't wait to retire and just be me, more of me. That's kind of where I'm at. 50s rock. I love it.
I love that. That's so cool. You know, the future's getting rosier, and I think that's how I would say I feel like that. I'm sure many of you can also agree. You know, the fact that you made this decision that is just so important to you, and being committed to your freedom.
Yeah. And there's never, ever, I can't think of a single moment in my life when I've thought to myself, God, I wish I'd had kids. Not even one single moment where that's crossed my mind. I would have been doing it for someone certainly other than myself, or for the child, and that's wrong, to me anyway, on my personal level. So I'm quite happy.
Thank you, Leanna.
You're welcome.
Lisette.
Yes, hi, I'm Lisette Schuitenmaker. I live in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and I am 65. And it's really wonderful to hear all your stories, because I can recognize so much. And when I was young, I kind of looked at my parents' life, and it was a very traditional life. So my father left for the office in the morning. I didn't know what people in offices did, but it looked kind of interesting. And my mother was at home with us, and we were fighting. And so I thought, and my father kind of came home at all hours, and I thought, who is having the better life here? But I also thought, you know, at the time, growing up in the 60s, you know, the liberation came in 68. I was like 14, but I mean, it took a while to percolate through. And I thought, you know, like it was inevitable that I had to find a husband and have children. But it never appealed to me. But at some point in university, my friends all, you know, started to get married and have these very serious relationships. And I got engaged. I got engaged to be married. And I dreaded, you know, I had this image of he would go to the office and I might have a little job on the side, but I would be cooped up in a house with 2 kids and a dog. Not my life. And then I had this dream that I was led to the altar all in white by my father. And when the question was popped, then I said no. And I heard, like in my dream, I heard the audience behind me go like, ah! And I thought, wow. And that was, Lenora, you said at 25 kind of things. I was 25 and I thought, I need to break up this relationship. And that was really a defining moment in my life when I took a step out of convention. I was raised very conventionally. I'm the eldest daughter. My mother had found her happiness in marriage and motherhood and thought, you know, this kind of strange eldest daughter I have, if only I get her on that track, you know, then she'll be fine. And from then on, my life just completely veered away from having children. And so I never feel like child free. And in our language, we don't have that word really. It's a bit of a made up word. We say I'm someone without children. I have no children. So it's not also politicized in that way. But it's just, I feel I don't lead my life. I kind of follow my life. And the more I follow it, the more of me can come through. And so I completely veered away, and my friends were getting houses and mortgages and, jobs and children. And I started my own company and started to live in Amsterdam. And I had this really wonderful life where every day was like, wow, I can do all this. I can start a company in publicity and have all these great clients and employ people and sell my company. And, and at 65, it hasn't stopped yet. And I certainly also am at this age of, people used to say, don't you find it selfish? And I was always, who is selfish here? Are you having those children for them, or are you having them for you? I mean, why? But that was kind of impolite to ask. So, and then don't you think you will regret it? And like you, I've not regretted it. It was not my life. I would really, I saw myself when I still had that image with, leaving with the 2 kids, leaving the dog behind. That's not my life either. No pets, no marriages. I've never been married. I'm in a 25-year committed relationship, and we have what we call in the Netherlands kind of a gay marriage. That's so we have legally, we've sorted things out, but I never wanted to be married. I'm so, like you say this, Kristen, you can get a divorce. I said, what a headache. I just want to be in a partnership that I can commit to on a day-to-day basis. And after 25 years, of course, it would be a nightmare to extricate things, but I'm not planning on that. I have a fantastic man. And I'm just planning to continue doing what I do as long as I can. I've also had several careers and just started again. And I'm in that age where my friends are getting to be grandparents. And with some of them, I really, really see the joy. But I go like, whew, it starts all over again. Because nowadays, with, both parents, young parents working, the grandparents come in to mind the kids. No, I can't do it. No, I have my no, then I have the other grandchildren. No, then we have So, I just want to say I've had a great life, and when I look to my future, I have many more books that want to come through me. So I keep doing what I'm doing, and when I look at the future, I actually look at you. You are the future, and me too. I don't want to convince people not to have kids. I just want to show them how wonderful it is to lead really the life that is yours to lead, the life that is within you.
You also wrote a book, though, about being child-free.
I did. I have it right here.
Childless Living.
The Joys and Challenges of Life Without Children. Actually, the Dutch title is better, but we couldn't really find it. But it's I was reading it this afternoon because I didn't exactly know what you were planning. And I went like, wow, that's a pretty well-researched book. So yes, I wrote about it, and exactly for that reason, to have people start conversations, read about it. Also for people who don't want to have children, to give it to their parents and say, it's not that I'm weird. I did a survey, and it turns out that across the globe, everywhere, this is now a topic, and everywhere people are, waking up to not monoculture, but, multicultural. So many ways to live. And not having children is just one of the many variations that are becoming more and more accepted, and not everywhere. People still have to fight. People are being, disinherited or thrown out of the family, being called a disgrace or whatever. And that's awful. Because every child ought to be loved and wanted and if women and also men, if it's not our thing, then let's not do it. Much better for everyone.
Just want to make the comment that the fact that we're having this is just really speaks to the stereotype too, because there's no child-free boys having these Zoom sessions, right? I mean, that's just the reality. That's not even a discussion for them. They just make the choice, but it seems to be more of the pressure.
Well, it's not so easy. I once did a talk here with Sheila Haiti, who wrote this wonderful book, Motherhood, the novel. Very, very good. I recommend it. And there was like 120 people in the audience in the room, and it was about 3 men. One was my partner, and one of the men got up at some point and said, it's easier for you women to talk about it. When I talk about it, I mean, I'm not even taken seriously because they say you can always do it. With women, at some point, at least that door is closed. With men, it continues their whole life. So I'm hoping men will start to have these conversations.
Good point.
Yeah, there are very few outspoken child-free men, I would say, in the community that are actually seen who have written books. We've had a couple of them.
Ricky Gervais is one. Ricky Gervais, you know him, of The Office and The Afterlife. He's spoken about it too.
Yeah, he's a big star. We've had a couple of authors here in our show, but I guess I believe the reason that men don't get as much heat on this is because they're not the ones birthing the kid in the end. I mean, it's always been a woman's job to, birth a kid and then take care of it. There is a lot of
still uncharted territory because men, there are so many expectations, even if these days, we all seem to be equal, so many expectations on men and being able to, I don't know, strange words come to mind, but to sow the seeds, so to say, is one of them. So,
yeah.
Yeah, maybe you should invite men at some point. Wouldn't that be interesting?
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Well, thank you, ladies, because everything that you've shared here it's really inspiring. It makes me so happy, and I'm sure my co-host will agree to have you here and share all your stories and share your point of view. I know Kristen had a question.
I asked this question. I did an interview a couple years ago with a bunch of child-free men. I wrote, there was a child-free forum online, and I asked, all the men, hey, can I have your email address? And I did a sort of email interview with all of them. And one of the questions I asked was, when you think of having a child in your life with you as the parent, what is your first feeling, your first thought? What single word would you use to describe what that would feel like to you? And so starting with Natasha, I'm just interested in knowing what you feel like if someone were to say to you, you're going to have children, you're going to have a child, you're going to be a parent. What's the first, well, I saw your face. How would you put that expression into a word? Like, what would be the one word to describe how that feels?
Horrible. The first thing that comes to mind is pregnancy, and that is, in my mind, one of the worst things to go through, because it just seems parasitic. Is that the right word? It doesn't seem normal. Just something. Yeah, you have an image in your mind, and it's 10 times worse than I don't even want to think about it. It's there's so many things that can go wrong in pregnancy, like death, rupturing, not things I want to think about when I get older, but one of the main reasons that I want to be child free when I'm whatever age, because it's also a commitment issue, because I don't want to regret having kids, and I prefer regret not having them, because that is way less likely to happen, because I want to do the jobs that I want to do, public service stuff that I won't be able to do if I'm pregnant. and things that I won't be able to do if I have a child, and if I get in a relationship, have a kid, he goes off, leaves me, I'm stuck with this kid that I never wanted, and I can't get rid of it without being seen. I get rid of it without being seen like a horrible person, to put it lightly. But yeah, no.
It's funny because there are women who leave relationships and the kids end up with and they are seen as horrible. But when fathers leave and the kids end up with the mother, it's just like, oh, well, that's normal. That's fine. But I love that you thought about that, because I don't think a lot of people who think about having kids think about the fact that you might be left alone with them, especially fathers. I don't think boys and men ever consider, when they're kind of demanding, make my legacy. I don't think they consider the fact that their wife might leave, their wife might die, and they might actually have to be the person who does the shopping and the hospitals and the feeding and all that stuff that they think the woman's going to do.
Yeah, and it seems like quite one-sided. Like the woman has to do everything, has to get up every night, feed the kid, breastfeed until 6 months or whenever it is. I forget these things. I don't want to know them. Yeah. Like, I already have problems sleeping anyway. I don't want to get up in the middle of the night to a screaming toddler or newborn.
And you said, Natasha, that you wanted to get involved with social work. Is that correct?
Public service.
Public
So like
service.
in army jobs and that.
I'm very impressed with that, actually. And like something that Lisette said was about being considered selfish if you don't want to have children. But everyone here has had such an amazing, fulfilled life, full of so much purpose, and like this is life that's full of dedication to other people. Like, for instance, even having this show, you're helping so many people, and you're shedding light on an issue that's, say, new. And I think that a lot of people, when they hear about someone being child-free, they assume that we choose to be child-free for the purposes of pursuing some sort of hedonistic lifestyle or something. And this is not the case. We all have very fulfilled lives dedicated to other people. And I never understood the thing with selfish. So your future career sounds amazing to me.
I mean, at 14, 15, 16, you're kind of I think especially in the UK, you're kind of forced to think of your future, because that's when you pick your GCSEs, and you can pick your GCSEs, that's a irreversible choice, but no, have a kid, no, you can get rid of it, no, it's fine. But yeah, you're forced to pick your GCSEs, and then that forces you to think of like 10 years in the future, like 5 years in the future, and then you kind of know what you want to do at like 50 or something. That's just the way my brain works. It's not very organized, but that's, yeah.
Everything you say, I mean, I was a teenager that I thought I knew what I wanted to do, just because I did know what I wanted to do, but I was focused on something that would take me away of the pressure of relationships and stuff. And I think now, like, I'm double your age and listening, I'm going, holy crap, we put so much pressure on teenagers. Like, I just want to give you a hug, because, I mean, none of us really have life figured out. It's impossible, as we can all agree. And I mean, you're doing amazing. And I mean, society puts on a ridiculous amount of pressure on you, and I love everything you're saying. You're doing amazing. I just wanted to say I'm supporting you. It's great, but we put way too much pressure on teenagers.
It's just the words
unfair,
not coming out in the proper order, and just making me feel like an idiot.
No, it's impossible to know, because we've all changed so much from our teens in ways that you can never imagine. So, I mean, you've already got a vision for yourself, and it's going to take you amazing places that you can't even think of right now. So, keep going with that.
You know what I love about what you said, Tasha, is that I've seen more and more teenage people in general sort of ask themselves these types of questions, like why are things like this? Like, why have other people or like later generations done things like this for so long? Like, questioning that is so cool. I never ever did that when I was your age, ever. Like, for me, it was set. It was, this is a path, I need to follow it. And I think it's awesome that younger people are doing it, because it means that whatever you choose in life, for example, in your case, you don't want to have kids, but maybe there's somebody your age who is thinking about becoming a mother, but maybe this choice is going to be a lot more conscious than it was for people, even my generation, So I think that's pretty cool.
Are you, Natasha, does it make you, do you have friends who are already thinking about having kids or who envision this future for themselves? And if you do you feel comfortable talking with them about your preference to not have children?
I mean, I've mentioned like what child-free means to them like once or twice, and one of my friends, she said that she would think of having kids, and it just seems like, oh, she can know that at this age. I can't do this at this age. But it's the same age and different expectations. I don't understand.
I like that you talked to her about it, though, because I think if she's like a lot of other people, such as a lot of us on here, there are a lot of people who it doesn't even occur to them that it's a choice. So if you're talking to them with the understanding that it is a choice, just as part of your everyday conversation, that I just think that's really helpful in getting other people to recognize, oh, okay, I can maybe decide which way my future is going to go, or I don't have to do this thing. Look at Natasha; she doesn't want them.
I think that sort of comes from, like, you go out, you see women with like prams and buggies with like children inside, and you think, oh, they're a mother. Then you see someone else like 5 minutes later, like just a woman walking down. You think, like, you don't think anything of it. You don't think, oh, not a mother. That doesn't like go through. But you don't think of it, and it's kind of, I think it's forced at a really young age, because I remember in year 8, it was year 5, I was 10. We had to do something where it was right. It was, we had to write a letter to our future grandchildren.
Oh my God.
Thinking back on that now, that must be so upsetting to people who are like, who really want kids years down the line, but find out that they don't, like they can't have it, and then thinking back on it, I can't imagine how they would feel. But yeah, I'm a tad bit irritated that I had to do that at age 10, but it's happened.
That is incredible. I've never heard of anything like that before, ever. Wow.
That's awful.
That is, wow. I'm so glad you shared that. That's amazingly horrible. I mean, I guess from a child-free perspective, but what a thing to presume. And like you said, for someone to find out later, like, did you get to keep the letter, or how did that work? Like, you wrote them, and then did you ever reread it? Or
I don't think I did it. I think I either refused to do it because I couldn't think of anything to put in there because I was 10.
I love that.
And you don't think of grandchildren at age 10. Yeah, no, I don't know what I wrote, if I did write anything. Just a bit of indoctrination, so, persuade the youth.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Thanks so much for sharing, Natasha. I have a question for Lisette and Liana, because this is the one thing that we get asked a lot is, what are you going to do when you're old? Who's going to take care of you? Blah, blah, blah. So I love Liana's face. I just want to know how you guys have planned for that, because we're not silly. We're not just going to be, not think about our future, but we're not going to depend on somebody else. I would like to know what you guys have done for that. Or have you,
just take care of yourself. You just gotta set it up so that you're able to take care of yourself. I mean, and I've taken care of myself for 30 years. I don't really worry about it. I honestly, I don't put a whole lot of thought into that. Lisette, I'm interested in what you have to say to that.
But well, I have a 92-year-old mother. And so we're four. My youngest brother lives in the US, but the three of us are really engaged in being there for her, visiting her, arranging things for her. And so I do wonder, who is going to do that for me? And I do think there are things we need to do. Like if I would die tomorrow, this would be a big house to clean out. So at some point I need to go clean out. But I wonder when I'm old, I don't feel old at all. So I wonder when that moment comes when, and potentially I will be too late. I will have gotten so old that I can't do it anymore. But but in my research, I also found that people like us usually have friends like across the ages, and people who have children very often have friends in their own age bracket, and then they know people in the age bracket of their children, but they don't have many in between. And many of us have friends of all ages. So I can only hope that I'm still that I am interesting enough and engaging enough that people will want to come and just be with me. And the other thing is, I think that it doesn't go for all parents, but many parents are quite dependent upon their children for entertainment and for fulfillment. And I am not. I'm self-fulfilling. I'm self-initiating. I'm good on my own. I don't feel lonely when I'm alone. So I think we have more practice too. And it's not like loneliness is going to hit me, because I really love my own company.
Amen.
And it's also a societal thing, because I'm part of the boomers and we are coming and we're all aging, and so I know the UN is looking at it and societies are looking at it, and I think new businesses will spring up of people taking our mail to the post office and things, if that still is there when I'm 90. But other things, I think there will be services and a whole new industry to care for us.
Yes, I think
we gotta make sure we're just cool people to be around and curious. I take Iris Apfel, who that is, this New York woman who is 100, and she's my role model. As is the Dalai Lama, interesting old people.
That's it.
Who never had children.
I have had the thought of who am I going to give all this stuff to? That's, I don't even have a lot of stuff, but I do have that thought on once in a while. But even if I do have moments of concern about my future woman, I still can go back to the fact that there are so many people who have children who aren't there for them. I have a list of people like that. They just put them someplace and they never see them again, and there's no real connection. And that's why, like that said about the friendships across all age groups, and those relationships are so solid.
It would be so much worse to have someone who you kind of expect to take care of you who has no interest at all, than to have no one and have known your whole life, okay, I'm on my own, taking care of myself, I'm setting this up for myself. But I mean, imagine having someone who you think is supposed to love you and take care of you, and they're just kind of checked out.
That happens all the time.
But I already thought that when they were asking this question, don't you think you will be lonely at your old age? And I thought, are you sure, those people you're going to love to bits and invest all that time and energy and money in, that they're going to be there? We'll see about
We talked about this in a previous episode too. I mean, that whole thing about suddenly being lonely in your old age is kind of like, don't you think that once you grow up, you'll want children? But Lisette, you just said you don't feel old. You don't even know what that is yet, and maybe you'll figure it out later. But there is no. It doesn't seem like. Why would you suddenly become lonely at a certain age? I mean, is there some magical age where suddenly you decide you require an extrovert life? I mean, like, what is that magical?
Well, I have interviewed. My next book is on widows, and I interviewed one widow who is quite deaf. She's over 90. She's a friend of my mother. All these women have kind of lost their husbands who would drive mostly, so they would drive small distances. But now, my mother certainly can't. This woman can't, so they can't visit each other anymore. This woman can't talk on the phone because she's so deaf. And so then you go into some kind of loneliness, and I can see that. But the end of life is a difficult period for everyone, and so it has different difficulties for different people.
And ultimately, you can't live your entire life in dread of what it's going to be like when you're 90. You can't do that. You
might
can't
not make it to 90.
That's right.
And then what? And then what have you done?
That's exactly.
Yeah.
The suggestion is that you should have children and you should live this entire life that you don't want to live just on the off chance that you're going to need them to take care of you when you're old.
Off chance.
What sense does that make?
None.
Very risky investment.
And even if they do, let's say they're the most wonderful children in the world and they will ultimately end up taking care of you and doing all that stuff. You've still then, if you didn't want children but thought you should have them for that reason, you have then lived an entire life you didn't want to live just for that little piece of old.
That's it. Not for me.
I have actually.
I can't even kind of get my head around it.
Either. Not even.
Pathetical is, yeah.
I wanted to say that I have actually taken care of an ailing relative, and it was very hard for everyone. And I will never forget something that she said. My grandmother. She said that I regret having to put you through this. I should have planned better. So that sort of stuck with me. People who have children have a separate sort of challenges to face with regards to getting old, and it's as Lisette said, it's not easy for anyone. So.
And not everyone's called to caretaking. I mean, I am an independent person, and okay, nobody's called to caretaking. I mean, I am an aunt. I love hanging out with my nephews, and I love being in people's lives, and I love having friends of all ages. And but the actual caretaking act, I mean, I would rather have a paid professional. And it's interesting with this pandemic happening, seeing what happens with elder care, and there is a lot to be improved, because like here in Alberta where I'm living, there was a lot of outbreaks in old folks homes, as was kind of everywhere, but that had addressed a lot of lack in care on a professional level. And I don't know if any of you noticed this, but on the news here, they would interview families who had loved ones in these care centers and how they couldn't see them. And so to what we've been speaking about, if you are going to be, if you're the resident in the care home and expecting your children to come visit you on a regular basis, but then a global pandemic happens where that can't happen, and you've never taken care of yourself, you've never developed a relationship with yourself, this is how I see it. I mean, life has a way of really bringing up issues and making you think that, okay, maybe the status quo is not going to work out long term. So like you were saying, why live all this life for a little thing that may or may not happen? And we're seeing so many things come out with this pandemic, how, and for the, by the time any of us may need that, hopefully there's been a lot of improvement too. But I also see the child-free community really connecting, and as you were saying, more companies catering to elder care. Like things are going to change, and when we get to that point, like who knows what has been done, and what people that keep saying, oh, you're going to be left alone with just a nurse, no one's going to care. I mean, that's an old system. That's already changing. It's changing here. I imagine around the world is going to continue to evolve. So, I feel more hopeful about that sort of thing. And like I said, I wanted to be 95 when I go, but that's not guaranteed, but I'm going to enjoy life. But things are changing, and I think changing for the better. And the more we have these conversations, especially within the child-free community and the childless community as well, the more ideas, younger generations, our generation, ideas can happen, communities can form around the world to be that group, in our older years. I mean, who knows? I think I feel hopeful about it. And for Natasha being a teenager, I hope that gives you a little more hope that it's moving in a nicer direction as far as those worries and even those bingos that I think we'll have more answers to.
I'm so old, I don't even know what bingos are. You're talking about it. I have no idea what it is.
Bingos are judgments, like the statements or the questions that child-free people get from usually parents, like people who are parents or people, maybe not parents, but who want to have kids. Like, you're selfish, or clock is ticking, or who's going to take care of you when you're old.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's so strange also that through my lifetime, I was a little disappointed when I was talking to 30-year-olds, because I thought, in the meantime, those questions have changed, but those questions are exactly the same as they were, to me. So come up with something new, please.
The one bingo that has, I guess, bothered me the most, and I think one of you mentioned it, is you're going to regret it.
Yeah.
That's the one that has been, for me, because I rather, like Natasha said, I rather regret not having children than having children, to be honest.
Yeah, that was really insightful, Natasha.
Yeah.
And if we're any evidence of it, no regrets at all.
Me neither.
Which is great. Like at my age, it's so good to know, because I've always been a long-term planner, and I've gotten less away from that now, because I'm no longer in a state of, well, later. It's like, no, there's no more later. I am not 20. I'm not a teenager. I am in my life, and I'm at the point where I don't want to put things off, because there is no later in my mind, if that makes sense. But I always love getting insights from those who are older than I am, because Lizette, you're talking about, you wanting just to be a very, very engaging person at all ages. And I love that, because, some of my favorite conversations I've ever had are with people in their 90s. Just who are still living, who still have life in them, who are still interested. And it's not that they know everything, but they still have, this is not a child-free person, but I don't know if any of you paid attention to Gloria Vanderbilt, Anderson Cooper's mother. Mm-hmm. But she lived, she had a very interesting life, but she was still painting up until she died recently. I followed her on Instagram because she was just a cool woman. She had a very unusual life as a socialite, but just her, she was in her 90s and she was into art, and she'd had all these romances, and just, life is so full of amazing possibilities I can't even think of for myself at this point. But, I just don't see old age as bad. I really don't. I'll have 120,000 wigs by then. Think about it.
And who to clear them out later?
I had a child-free uncle who was a hoarder, and there was only 3 of us left in the family, me, my brother, and my cousin. I've been down that road, and I've since had a will, and it taught me to be organized already, because it sucks.
But coming to that other point, if we can just continue, there's this paradox where people say, well, children keep you young.
Oh.
But so there's the thing about crossing over to adulthood, right? I was there when my sister announced to my parents that she was expecting. And all of a sudden, my sister had crossed the bridge. She was now going to be a parent. And I was 4 years old, and I was standing on the other side. I was like, oh, what did just happen? She just, crossed over. Now they're all together, and I'm like the weird one who doesn't want it. But for many parents, not all of them, I see many parents my age feel like older than me.
Yeah.
Because they have, then, especially when they are grandparents, they start to behave a bit, according to the stereotype, a bit in that mold, and they kind of still dress like young, but there is that. And many people my age kind of are falling asleep. They've kind of accomplished the thing, and their children are now well on their way, or they're worrying about them the whole time because they're depressed, they've just lost their job and are in an ugly divorce or whatever, and then that's the case. But I often feel people I know who have no children, men and women, are much more sparkly, much more broadly interested, much more lively than people with children, and that doesn't go across the board, but in general. Yeah, Liana, you're nodding.
100% agree. The only thing that keeps you younger is curiosity, in my opinion.
Exactly.
The only thing, and it does.
What gets me out of bed every day.
Me too.
What will happen today?
Yes, totally.
Series,
I want.
World Series of life.
That's it.
I would like to know if Christina agrees with that.
I absolutely do. I have, may I just say, you all ladies are absolutely beautiful and amazing, and I've seen around me, people are starting to have children, that age, and I've seen them rapidly, for 2 years, rapidly shift into someone else's shell, and morph into somebody else who is no longer like a person my age. They just age faster, I think. And meanwhile, their progress, sort of like curiosity or interest and engagement in community, it shrinks, it narrows, it stalls. So it's a very weird paradigm to observe, and I absolutely agree with what Liana and Lizette said. Absolutely.
If I just want to say a little quick thing about the regret bingo, because I think when you're older and you don't want kids, and you're already at a point where you've reached the age or the point in your life when you're like, yep, sure glad I didn't do that. It's easy to be irritated by the regret bingo, and just kind of, it's a very mild sort of irritation. It's like, that's a ridiculous thing to say. It's absurd, whatever, be quiet. But I think it's a cruel bingo if you're younger. I think it's really scary it could be scary to be in your teens or in your 20s and have someone threaten you with this idea that if you don't do this, you're going to get there and you're going to regret it. And it's this whole, what a frightening, I think it's a frightening pressure to put on somebody. And what's worse about it is that it's absolutely ridiculous, because it's something you don't want to do. So there's no reason people don't regret not doing things they don't want to do. If you have no interest in skydiving, as I don't, because it can kill you, and you'll see it coming, I have no regrets about having never tried it. If I decide later that I wish I would have skydived, that's not really regret. That's like, because then I could just do it at that point. What I'm wishing is that I had already done it, so I would know what it's like. But if you know what I mean, it doesn't make any sense at all.
But it's also true, there is not one thing that everybody in this world wants. Even if the Olympics are on and half the world watches it, there's people who take no interest at all. And there was this woman, Leta Hollingworth, I think she was called, 100 years ago, who said there must be like a parenting scale. So there's people who are born to be parents. They've always wanted it. They will be very good at it. And if it is given, they're at like 100%. But there's also those who have no interest. They're not the caring kind. It's not their life. And many are in between. And I think when you're in between, sometimes it's hard. when you're kind of 50-50, you can go both ways. Maybe both can make you happy. When you're 60-40, it's already a bit more difficult. I always thought I was like 70-30, 30% of me, there's irreplaceable experiences there. But the 70% was too big. And now I'm kind of like 99, maybe 100. But there is nothing that all of us want. So why would this child thing then be something everybody ought to want?
And then when you're older, if you suddenly do, you'll have people who, I don't know, there's this idea that you're going to get older and you're going to wish you had kids around. But that's also not regret. That's maybe changing your mind. If you wanted kids and you married someone who didn't want them, so you don't have them, that's regret later on if you wish you had them because you actually wanted them.
And also that's living with choices that you made.
Right.
In my book, there were several people who said, I wanted children, my partner didn't, and I chose that love because I felt good in that relationship. This was my person. And so we went with that. And, there's moments, but I mean, parents have moments, I'm sure. So there's just, some regrets sometimes. Okay.
There's the responsibility that we all have on ourselves, or that we need to take on ourselves to build a community for us. Not that every person that we meet in our current moment in time will remain in our lives, because as we all know, friends come and go. And I mean, not everyone's meant to be in your life all the time. But engaging in the community around you, I mean, that's what I've learned participating in the child-free community these last couple of years, is realizing, there's the friendships that are developing and the connections that are being made, and there's no guarantee, or I have no idea where any of it really goes. But for me, it's like I have to take the responsibility on myself to build a support system for myself where I can contribute and I can receive as well as needed. Because it really annoys me when I get that, or when I hear people talking about having kids just for the sake of having someone to talk to when they're old, because I'm like, well, what do you want to do when you're 70? Like, don't you want to still do things? And we've already talked about the assumptions that children are going to be there for you. And it's just like my grandfather fathered 16 kids and he still died alone. There's a big story behind it, but it's not uncommon. I mean, that doesn't mean anything. So we have the responsibility to create our own communities, and I don't mean birthing them.
Absolutely. All right, ladies. Well, we're going to start wrapping up now. Thank you so much. I mean, this conversation, we can go for hours, I think. I mean, it's so rich, and there's so much to talk about. Unfortunately, we only have this very short space. But we're all very happy that you came, and we, of course, want to keep in touch with all of you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Tasha. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Liana. Thank you, Lisette. We're very happy to have had you here. And looking forward to talk to you in the future too. So everyone who is listening or watching this episode, thanks for being here as well. You can send us an email at childfreegirls@gmail.com if you have any questions, any comments, anything you want to tell us. We're really happy to receive your messages.
We also have a website, childfreegirls.com. That's new. We can say that now. And of course, you can follow us on social media. We are the most active on Instagram and Facebook. Just search Childfree Girls, you'll find us there. But we're also on LinkedIn, Pinterest, TikTok, and Twitter. But mostly Facebook and Instagram.
Wow.
Yeah.
If you have a question for any of whatever age you are listening to this, if you have any questions that weren't addressed here, or if you want to ask something of any of the guests who were here, if you have a question for Natasha, for Lisette, for Liana, or for Christina, send us an email at childfreegirls@gmail.com, and we will get it to them, and we'll get your answer for you. Or you can leave your question at the bottom of this video or on the podcast. Can you leave a question on the podcast site?
Yes.
Okay. So leave your question wherever you want. Just address it to the person. The names are, you can spell them phonetically if you're listening to the podcast. We'll figure it out.
Thanks again, ladies, for being here.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye. No, you say bye.
No, you say bye.
Oh my God, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
You leave first.
I'm going.
Bye.
Bye.